know me, I have worked as a sports performance coach for since 2008, and it kind of fell into my lap. I was the captain of the college ultimate team there on the East Coast near y'all, Salisbury University. And what was happening is a lot of our athletes were getting injured, and we were kind of getting schooled. Like we had made nationals years prior, but we could never seem to get it right to get past sectionals in the years that I was there. So I went to the strength and conditioning, or the smartest guy that I knew regarding performance, and he was the head strength and conditioning coach at Salisbury University. His name's Matt Nine, and Matt's like, dude, have you tried this? And he showed me a speed ladder, and he's like, do you have any of your athletes lifting? And I'm like, no, we don't lift. And he pretty much just empowered me to start to train my team. And at that moment, I decided that this is what I wanted to do for a career, is be a collegiate strength and conditioning coach. So fast forward 12 years later, and my life has essentially been this pursuit of the mission of our business, which is to empower the global ultimate community. And I look at empowerment as two pieces. There's the inspiration piece, and then there's the education piece. And that's a big piece of what we're doing here. Can y'all still see?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I'm going to reference the presentation, even though that y'all can't see it. Wait one sec.
Yeah, I might need to zoom here, but it's...
Let me just put into the chat box it won't let me copy paste. Okay, never mind. So this the discussion here is a discussion based around 12 years of relentlessly executing and refining these programs in this training system to attempt to empower athletes to understand training well enough that you can take control of your own body and of your own career and create high level sustainable performance. So my job is to educate and to inspire so that I can empower you, so that you can empower yourself and your teammates. So the conversation here is really around sustainable, meaning long-term peak performance. And the reality is we can't be in peak state consistently. So there's a couple pieces, like mindset wise, going into this, is recognizing that this isn't a conversation around like, yeah, if we kind of train halfway and we just play ultimate, we're going to have fun. I believe in having fun, but the reality is this conversation is based around how to reach our absolute highest level of peak performance. And that requires a consistent growth mindset. And growth and getting to that next level requires pushing your limits, pushing past what you think you're capable of, and then making sure that you're recovering. And so we call this the Zen Jam lifestyle, is we need to make sure that we can come up onto these high highs, these peaks, playing ultimate and training, but then we need to be able to come down into Zen mode and recover. So it's really the mindset going in is, I'm not just going to give you a bunch of, hey, do this. I need to give you kind of the thought process and overall methodology behind it so that you can have a clear understanding of what this process is about and go through the journey yourself. And that's one of our taglines with Training for Ultimate, is it's about the process, and the process is never ending. And if we can treat it like school, learn, then we're going to have more success. I've had the athletes that don't come to me just to be spoon-fed, but the athletes that come to me to really learn and be open-minded are the ones who grow the most. And I can't wait till I can get you this presentation, because I got these great photos of Brute Squad, and there's a photo of Bo Kittredge here, which is an athlete that, like, you look at the greatest of all time. He moved up to Boston to train with me when he took that job for the New York Empire, and the greatest player in the sport, and he just came to me like a sponge, just wanted to learn everything that he could. And that's one of the traits of the greats, is just consistent humility, to earn your swagger. That's why we call it Humila Swag. That's our Beach Ultimate team. You've got to put in the work and be humble to earn your swag. So what is our strategy moving forward into peak performance? And that's the graphic that you have there. We think about this as sphere integration. We want to be able to control all of the aspects around training and then have a strategy and game plan within each. So the big thing I wanted to do today is kind of present on what are these 4 spheres and these 4 buckets, give you a little bit of taste of what each one is, and then we can dive into each, whatever questions that y'all have, and I can even demonstrate stuff here so that y'all can see. But the 4 spheres of peak performance: nutrition, lifestyle, sports skills training, and functional performance training. So sports skill training, you could also call that ultimate skills training, but it would be for any sport. I mean, that with ultimate, obviously, throwing, catching, offense, defense, game IQ, all that stuff matters. Nutrition is, I don't want to go into nutrition. It's not my particular strong suit, but I do have my health coach. She's the owner of Bula Beach Ultimate, and her name's Sophia, and she's tremendous. So if you need references or somebody to help with ultimate specific nutrition, I got your back there. The next sphere would be lifestyle, and lifestyle, it's so much about optimizing your environment to create an environment that can elicit adaptation. And that, some people think I'm crazy that I've been coming back and forth to the Philippines all these years. But when it comes to lifestyle, it's just like, I just got set up automated coconuts. Like, I get coconuts delivered to my door every single day. I can do recovery swims. I can get into the sunshine. We can do ice baths. It's very low stress environment. And it's just it's a training conducive environment. So when we live in big cities, when we, are sitting a lot, when we're, in toxic relationships or whatever it is, like, all these things can limit our ability to adapt. And if we want to have, elite level adaptation to be our best selves, we have to be thinking about lifestyle factors. And we could go deep into this. It's one of my favorite spheres. I did live in the city, Boston, the past 2 years. And in order to make that environment optimized, I created an office that we called the Zen Den. And I had 2 whiteboards on the wall, stand-up desk. I bought a freezer, and I filled it up with water and put it on a timer so it was cold 24/7, so I could get into the ice bath every day. I bought a sauna, and so I could do contrast therapy. And I bought a bunch of plants, and I did everything I could to optimize that environment to create high-level adaptation. And I think that's important to think about, because so many people don't recover, and so many people don't, we put too much stress into our everyday life. And the reality is stress, we want to put stress into training so that our bodies can recover from that good stress. And all the extra stress that we have of commuting, of sitting, of, just all these things really do affect our environment. So sometimes simple lifestyle changes can make a difference. So now the meat of it, when we break off the FPT, that's functional performance training. And what you see there are the 4 buckets. So we can think about movement quality, strength and power, speed and agility, and conditioning as 4 different buckets that an athlete needs to fill and drain at different times over the calendar year. So we have to think about this as delayed gratification and come at it from a perspective of periodization. And we need to take a step back and look at, what kind of player do I want to be? Do I want to play explosive ultimate, or do I want to play marathon style ultimate? And meaning, do I want to be as fast as possible, or do I want to Foley, are you able? Somebody just entered waiting room. Okay, you got him. I can't wait for y'all to see these slides. They're so slick. because we got a lot of good graphics, and I put a lot of brute squat and bow and just really good stuff. But are y'all cool with just hearing me talk for now? So we think about this as there's 4 buckets, and we want to fill and drain these different buckets at different points over the course of the calendar year. So what are these different buckets? Well, there is movement quality, which is all of our rehab, self-myofascial release, which is like foam rolling and using the cross balls, stretching using contract relax, which is just the best way to stretch, performance breathing, stuff like the Wim Hof method, what we call the Magic 4, is something that we do almost every day in our warm-ups using something called an apnea trainer, mobility and activations, just this bucket that is focused on getting our bodies into a good position and supple and ready to train. So it's all the warm-up stuff. But the reality is there's so many injuries in ultimate, and there's a reason for that. And I think it's important to realize, like, this is an innately asymmetrical sport. So we have these tendencies where we only throw on one side. So if you look at a forehand, you have to drive your throwing side leg into external rotation, meaning the toe opens up to be able to get power into that forehand. And then you have to, with the forehand, you have to laterally flex your spine. Let's say you're a right-handed thrower, your right hip's going to be in external rotation, and you're going to right side laterally flex your spine, meaning kind of do a little side crunch right in order to throw that disc. And then when you throw a backhand, you're going to rotate, but you're only rotating the spine one side. And then we pivot. So this ends up that you have these consistent asymmetries in ultimate. And if you think about playing ultimate, having tournament weekends, having practices, you're taking a ton of reps, a ton of volume of these asymmetrical patterns and feeding that into your body. And then you're going and running for so long, especially with the way that ultimate is tournament play. So what we end up with is a very asymmetrical body, and you're asking this body to do things that are very, very high intensity for a lot of volume. And if we don't take the opportunity to say, okay, here's our asymmetries, we have the opportunity to correct them, and the correcting them is doing the functional performance training. And if we look at it that way, then we see that, rehab is training and training is rehab. It's all in the same continuum. And so a lot of people will get injured and they'll just go to PT or chiropractic or whatever it is. But the reality is functional performance training fixes so many of these asymmetries and can do all the rehab that a lot of times you just need functional performance training. You don't necessarily need to go to a PT, and that's a whole nother discussion that I would love to get into. But that's why you can see at the top, there is movement quality. We have to have a baseline level of movement quality. And if we can have good patterns, then it spills into these other 3 buckets, which are speed and agility, strength and power, and conditioning. Now, speed and agility refers to skills. These are skills within acceleration, top end speed, which is just linear sagittal plane sprinting. We have a starting phase, an acceleration phase, and then a top end speed phase. And then we have agility, which are skills. We have a model called the MP agility, which is 8 steps to agility. And we could go deep into those 2. There's step 1, learn the fundamentals of what we call IFP, inside foot push. Step 2, learn the fundamentals of OFP, outside foot push, which IFP would be things like jab steps and shuffles, defensive shuffles. OFP would be things like crossovers and defensive unders. Once you master the basics there, then step 3 is to blend IFP and OFP. And then we go into learning what's called hip dissociation. So the ability to keep the shoulders square while moving the hips in anticipation for a different pattern, such as an acceleration towards the disc on defense. And then we take these fundamentals of defensive footwork and we blend IFP, OFP, and hip dissociation. And once we've done all that, then we add reaction to it, which is what agility really is. And then we condition these patterns. So speed and agility refers to the skills around learning and refining what I just described in these 8 steps. And that starts with simple things and warm-ups like doing crossovers, doing jab steps, doing ladder hip twist drill, all these things. But you have to have an end goal, and the end goal is to be able to get through and understand all the patterns that you'll see in Ultimate, but rehearse them in a very in a manner where you're overemphasizing the patterns. So you're going to see a lot of things that we do, for example, in speed work, where the acceleration phase, we're going to do things where we're doing big dramatic extension pushes, where you're pushing the hip into the full extension and you're getting the glute to grab, and then you're putting down that getaway step and you're getting the glute to grab. And we call these jackhammers for extension. And that's one side of the spectrum. The other side is doing it where you're doing it for turnover. And that's why our model works really well. Is with speed and agility, almost every one of our patterns, we're going to do it for as dramatic full range of motion as we can. And then we're going to do it for as quick turnover as we can. And in sport, in Ultimate, we end up somewhere in the middle. I'll do workshops and I'll show a crossover toe drag, and people be like, wow, we don't do that in Ultimate. And it's like, yeah, but we are training the hips to be able to produce force through full range of motion. And if we do that, and then we combine it with the other end of the spectrum, which is the turnover, the quickness, the reaction, then we meet somewhere in the middle in sport. So our discussion around agility is going to be different than our discussion around speed. Speed, we use something called the ABCs of speed, and I've got some videos here that you'll see. But it's important to realize that there's 3 separate pieces within speed that we need to train, and that's the start, the acceleration phase, and then the top end speed phase. And within acceleration, we're looking at things like what we call the ABCs, which is aggressive arm action, having a steep body angle, and then creating what we call thigh separation. And then within top end speed, the cues are very different. We're thinking float on the ground, upright torso, where the arms, we're not punching behind, we're throwing the balls up in front and trying to get really floaty so that we have time to turn over what we call a cycle kick, which is the hip goes into extension, glute fires, and then the hamstring fires as the heel hits the butt, and then it swings through to front side flexion, and then you put force into the ground. And depending on what kind of player you want to be, depends on, of course, we're going to train a handler with a lot more acceleration than a initiation cutter in 7-on-7. It's going to be, we want everybody to have all these skills, but it's important that Ultimate players understand the basics of ABCs of acceleration and the top end speed mechanics. So that's speed and agility. Now, moving on to strength and power. Strength and power refers to neuromuscular adaptation. So just quickly, strength and power conditioning. Strength and power, neuromuscular adaptation. We're thinking about how we can create more force within the body to put more force in the ground, and then how we can do it quickly. So force times velocity. And that's the recipe for being powerful. This is a different conversation and a different bucket than conditioning. Conditioning is the conversation around cardiorespiratory adaptation. So how the body adapts to oxygen coming in and how it's distributed to the periphery. And that's the conversation around how the heart works and how the lungs function. So looking at strength and power first, we want to build the capacity to put more force into the ground. If we do this, we will reduce injury, we will run faster, jump higher, and cut sharper. But a lot of athletes are hesitant to start lifting because they don't know how, or it's too intimidating, or they don't have a system that integrates it into speed and agility. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so proud of our system and why we're faster than everyone and why we get more results than everyone, is because the strength and power cueing and the ways that we do all the exercises in the gym have been prescribed that way because they have direct transfer to all these speed and agility drills that I just described to y'all. So, for example, the glutes, the proximal glutes should be the most propulsive muscle in the body. You should be able to go do an extension push and get your hip into full extension. And we should be able to take that hip into full extension, get the glute to grab, and utilize that big, powerful glute. But so many of us sit so often at our desk that, our glutes, just turn off. We get the panini butt. So it's harder for the glutes to turn on. So in the strength program, we do a ton of things where we're doing isometric holds, where we cue what we call internal rotation. So we already know that the ultimate drives external rotation, which is the toes out to the side. And when you do that and your foot strikes underneath your hip and you go to extend your hip, you're not going to use your inner glutes as much as you will the outer glutes. And the outer glutes aren't as big. They're made to drive external rotation. Now, the inner glutes are what we want to train, but we need to do it in the gym with what we call an internal rotation bias. And maybe I can demonstrate this when I wrap up here, but it's so crucial for ultimate players to understand that concept that we need proximal glute. So we have to do a lot of isometric holds, meaning like 30 seconds, donkey kicks, hip lifts, different drills to get that glute to fire in the hip being an internal rotation. And then when we do that, we can do the strength and power programming that really develops power within the proximal glutes. Things like kettlebell swings, hang cleans, vertical jump and stick. And that's where it's important here to recognize that there's essentially 8 categories of speed or strength and power that you need to be training every time that you go to the gym. And those are, we need to push something like a push up, a bench press, a dumbbell press. We need to pull something like a chin up, a dumbbell row, an inverted row, an SLDL row, a band pull apart. We need to balance pushing, pulling, and then we need to balance hip dominant and knee dominant, meaning the movements such as an SLDL or a deadlift that recruit and utilize the muscles around the hip. And then there's knee dominant, which are focused on the muscles around the knees. So more quad dominant kind of stuff like a split squat, a lunge, things like that. And then there's the core work, and then there's the plyometric work, and then there's the auxiliary work. Stuff like in our Peak Plus now, we're doing a ton of wrist strengthening and these little auxiliary pieces like isometric hamstring work and things like eccentric heel drops and calf raises to kind of make us real springy and to perform. We want to be like kangaroos. We want to prance and float, but then we want to be able to have the ability to turn it on and put a lot of force in the ground very quickly. And that's why you see, if you follow the MP Insta, you see so much of the trap bar deadlift and hip lift and then single leg moves like an SLDL, a single leg deadlift, a split squat, a rear foot elevated split squat. And all these things are so important to balance because, ultimate is played on one leg. We need to have a lot of single leg strength and stability. And that's important. So what you'll see here when I can share this is you'll see, I just put a couple examples of brute squat and bow doing some of these fundamental patterns. So you'll see NASA doing a SLDL. You'll see Alex O doing a rear foot elevated split squat. You'll see some other brutes doing foot elevated hip lifts. These are just crucial moves. And then you'll see some really strong athletes. Like I think a lot of athletes are scared to lift heavy, but if you do it safely, like a trap bar deadlift, it's such a safe move because the handles are high and you're in a position very similar to vertical jump. And there's a video here of Amber Sinecrope. I don't know if y'all know her. She's been playing brute squat for like 13 years. She's just a legend. but she probably weighs like 120 pounds or so, and she's doing a trap bar deadlift at 240. And the thing to and they went and won championship. And one of the things that is so important with strength and power development is the consistent exposure and the ability to consistently add weight progressively and do it in a periodized fashion. And that's where you'll see these graphics of the periodization is what, one of the things I'll tell y'all, I trust y'all. I mean, it's cool if people know, but like one of the things I've been working on with USA Ultimate for all these years is writing the book on training for Ultimate. And the reason that it's going to be so good and it's going to be so authentic is because I've consistently taken these programs and gone out to, I've done 22 countries around the world. I've been with Ironside. I've been with Brute Squad. I've been with Humiliswag. I've been with the Boracay Dragons. I've been with Germany national team. The list goes on. And what I've done with my work is I've actually taken these training programs that build towards a peak and I've implemented them. And then immediately after the peak, I'll sit down with my programming admin, Z, in Perth, Australia, and we will rip apart the program and we'll say what worked well, what didn't work well, what can we refine. And what we've been able to do is create a yearly plan on training for Ultimate, which means that we have an off season, a preseason, and an in season. The off season is 4 phases. The preseason is 3 phases, and the in season is 4 phases. Now, of course, not everybody is going to have the ability to start training in November and peak in October. We have pro leagues. We have people. Not everybody plays at nationals. It's not everybody's going to be dedicated enough to do all 11 phases, but we needed to do that and refine it. And the phase the block of training, these are called blocks. When you do 4 phases or a complete program, A to Z, it's called a block of training. So the blocks, the focus are going to be different during off season, preseason, in season. And that's why we have this graphic with the 4 buckets is like, which buckets do we fill during what point of the year? So strength and power is going to be so important to fill that bucket like now, because we're not playing Ultimate. It's the off season. We don't need to worry nearly as much about speed, agility, or conditioning. We need to make sure that our body is tuned up in a good position and getting very, very strong. So off season, we fill that movement quality bucket, we fill that strength and power bucket, and then we still condition and we still do speed and agility, but we just drain those buckets. But then preseason time around like tryouts, you generally, for club series, we would want to run off season November, December, January, February, and then March, April, May, building up to tryouts, we run the preseason. Well, when we run that preseason program, we're not going to lift 3 days a week. We're going to lift 2 days a week. So we the strength and power bucket, we drain a little bit, and then we fill the speed and agility and conditioning buckets. And which kind of programs and phases we use during the time on the calendar year really depends, just how much time we have and what kind of player that you want to be. So that said, I wanted to just tell you about the off season, the way that it flows, and why delayed gratification is so important, and why having a mindset around delayed gratification when it comes to training is so important. So it's a 4-phase program, and we think about it as phase 1 is going to be what we call slow strong. Phase 2 is what we call swole strong. Phase 3, strong, and phase 4, conversion to power. And I'm laughing because like these are terms that I used to use a lot more scientific terms. And then I started working with Brute Squad. They're like, dude, you overwhelm people with your jargon. Like, you got to make stuff more cute and approachable. And they're like, what? Rather than calling this phase eccentric isometric, which just means that we do stuff very slow and we hold a lot of positions, why don't we call it slow strong? Because we're getting strong, but we're going very, very slow. And then in the hypertrophy phase, meaning increasing muscle mass, why don't we call that swole strong? And it's brilliant. We ran with it. And it really should make sense. So we have a slow strong phase where we want to dial in these patterns by doing these movements very, very slow and holding position. So doing something like a goblet squat or a front squat with a mini band around your knees, driving that mini band out, going down to half squat depth and holding 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you drive up. Almost all the movements within first phase slow strong are eccentric isometric based. Then we move on to swole strong, which means we're going to put on muscle mass, and it's okay to put on muscle mass because this is the off season. And if you have a muscle with a bigger cross-sectional area, it has more potential to get strong. So if you get a little bit of extra muscle mass, then when you go into that third phase, strong, you're going to have way more potential to get strong. And then once we get strong, excuse me, once we get strong, we're going to look at that. There's a graphic you'll see called the force velocity curve, but we're going to take that high levels of force that our body can produce, and we're going to lower the load, but we're going to increase the speed. So we're essentially going to convert to power. And what you'll see, if you follow the Instagram and what our athletes are doing now with Peak Plus, we're just finishing up phase 4. So a lot of us are just super strong, and we're converting all that to power. And then because of COVID, come October 19th, we're going to start this 4th phase off-season block again. And that's going to set us up for our traditional timeline of finishing phase 4 in February and then moving on to preseason, which I'm happy to go over with y'all. But this last piece, and then we could do a little jam, is conditioning. And I wanted to, kind of go over all this with y'all because there is so much that I could go into about. I could do an hour, like, lectures on any one of these portals, and that's why my workshops are 6 hours, because we try to go we try to go through and really break these down. So I just wanted to do an overview. And conditioning is one of the things that's probably the hardest to understand within Ultimate, because the function of the heart and the lungs together, and just how every body is different. So a couple big things with conditioning is just, gone are the days where we can just go run shuttles all day and do, work to rest ratios. We used to just do, let's do 150 shuttles on a 1-to-3 work to rest ratio, and then let's progress to 1-to-2, and then let's progress to 1-to-1. That doesn't work nearly as much as actually having a heart rate monitor and looking at training under and above what we call anaerobic threshold. And then doing that by having high days and low days, and then using principles of periodization together with your personal heart rate data to make you the program that works for you. So in general, we want almost all of our athletes to be below 60 beats per minute resting heart rate. So if you get a heart rate monitor and you start doing your resting heart rate and you realize that you're at 60, 70 beats per minute, then you're probably somebody who needs to do more aerobic work, which would be things like cardiac output, aerobic power intervals, aerobic threshold intervals, things like that. And then, but how are we going to know if you are above or below what we call our anaerobic threshold, which is the point where your body goes from using oxygen for energy to secreting lactate? And the only way to really know that is to do what all of our athletes do, and that's what's called a Cooper's test. So we go out and we run a Cooper's test, and it gets our heart rate up as high as it can. We write down that number, and then we see how long it takes for our heart rate, or what our heart rate drops to after 1 minute and 2 minutes. And then based on that data, and we get an average of your heart rate during all that, then we know, okay, my anaerobic threshold is 174 beats a minute. So if I'm going out to run tempo runs, for example, or aerobic power intervals, I need to not go over that, because the sooner you go over your anaerobic threshold, you're going to get sore, you're going to produce lactate, and you're not going to get the aerobic development that we need so that we can do the things that are over threshold, like the shuttles and like the max effort universe points. But we want to be prepared to do that. So we're going to have a strategy to see how much aerobic work that we need to do. And then we're going to have to be very aware of not going over threshold during a lot of these phases. And I don't expect everybody to get a heart rate monitor. It's just when it comes to being objective about your conditioning, it's really the only way. And then high days versus low days. I think so many people just want to go as hard as possible, so they train 2-3 days a week, and then they're just wrecked the other days. We should be able to train 6 days a week, but some of the workouts are going to be what we call low days, which stimulate recovery by sending blood flow throughout the body. So like tempo runs would be an example of a low to moderate day. Aerobic plyometrics, where we're just doing, I won't go too into methods, but there's a lot of good methods that we use to develop aerobically. So yeah, that's pretty much the overview. And I wanted to spend a lot of time doing stop share. I wanted to spend a lot of time doing questions and go over stuff. So if y'all are there.
You want to demonstrate some of those? I know you talked about that inner thing. I don't know.
Yeah, so like just the ultimate asymmetries. So like we should be able to stand knees forward, toes forward, and have this kind of natural standing position. But if I asked a lot of y'all to just kind of like shake it out and then like stand there, then you're gonna look in your right toe. I mean, you can even try it now. You just kind of like stand up and then shake it out, and then you look down. And generally, if you're right-handed, your right toe is going to be out to the side. And that's because a lot of us, like we go to throw a forehand, and we have to drive this extra rotation. That's the knee going out. And that ends up that we see a lot of this with that right side out. So an example of internal rotation bias would be like something like an SLDL. I'm not going to do the SLDL like this. We're going to bias to internal rotation. And then like one of our favorite warm-up drills is we put the heel on the wall. But if I ask you to put your heel on the wall, most of you are going to be like this. But I need you to turn the toe in so that we can get these muscles working, the inner glutes, not the outer glutes. So if I go to do a sprint and I create this thigh separation, we want to be essentially here so that when the foot hits the ground, these muscles, let's see if I can not run into something, but we want to be able to get this glute to grab by getting essentially this position in the glute to grab, but not this position with the toe way out, because then these muscles end up doing too much work. So the donkey kick I described is just, we want to be able to go to this position and raise up, and most people will be like this, but we want to bias internal rotation. So we want to be here and think about these inner glutes working. And that's just like another evolution. Is a long time ago, we realized that these hip rotators being weak, the outside glutes, are the reason that we get a lot of ACLs in ultimate, because we go to land, the knee collapses. And the reason the knee collapses is because these hip rotators aren't there to stabilize and bring it back out. So we started doing, mini band drills. We would put the mini band there and go in and out. And people got so attached to that concept that they just trained hip rotators so much, but we forgot about these glutes. These should be the most propulsive muscles in the body. So that internal rotation bias is something that we do consistently, because again, we're trying to undo what we do in ultimate. We're always here, we're always here, we're always rotating here. And it's a little different for left-handed players, but that's why it's important to throw both sides and then use like the Monday after tournament to get into the gym or into your, this is just my like zoomed in space. I got one of these massage guns and everything that I need. And we're going to have to undo, say hi, Percy. It's my cat. Percy. We're going to have to undo the things that we do to our body in Ultimate. And it's a consistent process because it's just the nature of the sport. We all want to play, but it's all going to be hard on the body unless we can understand these concepts well enough to get ourselves back into a good position and then strengthen those good positions. So again, this is about injury reduction and high performance, but injury reduction first, because it's not fun when you're on the sidelines and all your teammates are playing and you're not.
So what would you say to ambidextrous players, or players that are like using both sides consistently? Are you just doing more of those exercises to equal out, or do those sides even themselves?
Well, that's smart. People who can train both sides are great, but the body is innately asymmetrical just by the nature of the organs. So we all, no matter how ambidextrous you are, we all have asymmetries. Like the majority of people, because of the nature of the diaphragm, 3 points of attachment, 2 points of attachment, and then the heart here. Like generally, most people shift a little bit right, and people have harder time getting their left obliques to work. So almost everybody, and this is like kind of intricate stuff, but it's one of the things that's helped me and some of our top athletes. But we do a lot of our breathing drills and we cue just left rib cage down. And we do that with left-handed athletes too, because it's just the nature of the diaphragm. Almost everybody is just a little bit more here. Then you add Ultimate right-handed throwing to that, and it makes it even worse. But those ambidextrous players have an advantage, but they still they're gonna generally choose one side over the other with certain games. You know, you can't be switching your pivot in the middle of a game. So, or maybe you can, but yeah, I think it's still, those players still need to do functional performance training.
Tim, I think one of the things that you'd mentioned is a lot of folks, especially here in America, have desk jobs and they're always sitting, and that tends to do a lot of harm to their bodies when it comes to at least functional performance. What's something that the average person with a desk job could do just on a day-to-day basis, like throughout the day, to kind of help limit the damage that the chairs and the desks are doing to our bodies on that we're not realizing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think it's realizing like what flexion is and what extension is. So sport is extension. Like we want to be able to get, these hips into extension and create thigh separation. So this is backside extension, front side flexion. When we jump, it's all extension. When we do a kettlebell swing, it's extension. So the opposite of that is flexion. And if we're locked up in these hip flexors like this all day, then we're going to have a harder time getting the hip here. So, go to the movement quality. We have a base level site in the movement quality bucket, and you'll see, self-myofascial release and stretching and different things. There's a lot of different strategies. And I think utilizing with the contract, relax front side stretch and then rolling on the front side is going to allow you to open up hip extension. So something as simple as, I've been sitting all day, so I'm short here. So I'm going to go into what we call, this is where we do, split squats and everything. And then I'm going to do contract, relax. So I'm going to squeeze my butt, squeeze my abs, drive my knee into the ground, huge stretch here, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then turn it off and go deeper. Again, almost all of our stretches are 3 sets of 5 on, 5 off, contract, relax. And then once we've opened up hip extension, then we would add what we call belly breaths. And that gives you a big kind of opener here. And then we would, this is the roller that we use, which I believe you can get 20% off of these with MPFPT code, but just rolling on the front side. So just taking some time to open up in there. And then we always want to use what's called tack and stretch. So you tack down a part of the tissue and you pull past. And then even working from this position. And this is one of the reasons I did this on the iPad, is so that I could just work with my feet up. Like I spend so much time sitting on the Rolga because it has these little nodules that go right into the middle. And I'll just sit like this and work, or just come, to this position and work. So those are a couple ideas, but the stand-up desk also works well, but it's hard sometimes to focus long periods stand-up desk.
Gotcha. Thanks, Tim.
Let's go. Questions.
Here, I'll ask some questions. There are a couple of college cashiers. I know your program tends to focus on the club season, like you were saying, off season and get ready for October, pretty much for nationals type of stuff. What would you say to like a college kid who needs to be ready for, the series in the spring, and then come back and play club and hopefully be ready in the fall?
Yeah, I mean, we have a ton of athletes like that, and it's like the book is focused on club in the sense that only club players can do all of the off season, preseason, in season. But we have subscribers in 40 countries around the world, and we've had a ton of college teams. We've done a lot of work with Tina Booth's team, UMass Amherst. And with those kids, we do a modified program because they're still competing in the fall, but the fall is still technically the off season if the goal is to peak in March, April, sectionals, regionals time, and then maybe qualify for nationals. So in the past, what we've done with our college teams is we've done a modified off season during the fall where they do 2 times a week gym, and then the conditioning, we give conditioning methods that they can integrate into practices. And then there's generally a break in tournaments and in playing from December to about February. And that's where we want to go super off season. And that's what's so slick, about our team builder and our Peak Plus is we're able to take on, like when you apply for Team Plus and you have a full team that gets on, 1, it's a lot cheaper when you have the full Team Plus package, but 2, it allows us to customize for that team. And when we have a college team that has December and January, that's the time we're saying, like, look, we're going to fill the strength and power bucket and get you really strong and then aerobically prepared. And then depending on your tournament schedule in the spring, we modify from there. But again, with COVID, almost everybody is equal playing field. Like almost everybody needs to be getting, on off season. If you delay it past October, you're going to miss out on, what you could do next year. Cause this is one of the greatest opportunities that we've had. It's rare that athletes get this much time off of Ultimate to rebuild your bodies and build these requisite qualities. It's like building the foundation so that you can build a spaceship. And then once you're ready, you light the fire and the spaceship, goes to the moon. And now's our opportunity to really build a sturdy, powerful, explosive spaceship.
And I think one of the things that might hold a lot of people back is just kind of like the overwhelming amount of information that people feel like they need to know to be able to hit this kind of peak performance. You mentioned, other people have already said that you kind of use a lot of your jargon when it comes to explaining how different movements work. And especially for people who are not used to being in the gym, just kind of jumping into a program like this can kind of seem really, really intimidating, and they just feel really out of place. What's some advice that you think you might be able to give for folks who are really wanting to give it a good shot, but just feel like there's no way they're going to be able to keep up?
Well, that's my job. Like, so that the job is to properly onboard athletes by giving you piece by piece. And that's why we do these open enrollments. It's like when we start the program on October 18th, there's going to be a week of what's called orientation. And there's just no way around it. You're going to have to go through orientation. You're going to have to treat it like school a little bit to understand some of these things at first. It's like you can't just go do fun workouts all the time and experience this dopamine rush and expect to be your best self. You've got to learn these concepts, and the sooner that you can learn them, like that's why we have subscribers that have been with us for, you know, some of these brute squats since 2012, some of these Ironside, like just so consistently for so many years, because the athletes that get onboarded and understand these things that I'm explaining, then the next time they go through a peak or when they start their next training cycle, their next program with us, it's already so much easier because they've already been onboarded and they get it. And that's where like, so that's the first piece, is understand that our onboarding is really good, but it's going to be on you to learn the stuff. And like, I can't say for anybody, if you're really serious about being the best that you can be, and I understand people might be overwhelmed, but the reality is we have one of the most supportive communities, because we're constantly, anytime you have a question or a video, we have our Slack forums, we started a Facebook group, and people send me and Z's our full-time program admin, questions and videos all the time so that they can feel supported and get through the process. So there is going to be a little bit of a time where it's like you got to learn, but each phase runs for 4 weeks. So you have 4 weeks to like dial this stuff in. And if you look at, like, we just did a program with Altitude Youth Ultimate, like very beginner level athletes. Like a lot of the newer brute squads had never trained before I got back to Boston. We've done a ton of, we've done workshops and taught MPFPT to 22 countries around the world. And the majority of them have been like recreational masters levels players. You know, you see on Instagram, like all these elites and stuff, but like, here's an example. I'm training this group here, and we have an athlete that's Christian Tial, this, you know, Olympic medalist, kite surfer, just savage athlete. And then we've got this girl named Melina, who's never sprinted or lifted a weight in her life. But what our program has in it is the ability to progress and regress. So when Christian and I are doing, let's say, a front squat with heavy weights, well, that's a knee dominant movement, but we don't need beginner athletes to front squat. We need you to learn to goblet squat. So we have that option for you as to, you can regress and start here, or a beginner level program. Like if you go to mpfpt.com, you'll see 0, or trainingforultimate.com, 0 level, 1 level, and 2 level. And the mpfpt.com is kind of choose your own adventure. You go in portal by portal and you can get the programs, but the programs there are based on, they're not portal integrated, meaning just, this is a program just for strength and power. So you only do the gym stuff when you do strength and power 0, you know, conditioning, or, you know, speed and agility 0, and then you progress through. But that's different than Peak Plus, because Peak Plus, you get your workouts every day and it's on your phone, and there's the team feed, and it's really, and it saves your weight so you can see it. So, you know, there's so many beginners that do our program, and then there's so many advanced people that do our program. But I will say, like, everybody can do it, and we are very, very supportive. But you know, the workouts in phase 1 are going to take you 2 hours. It's just the reality. You need to spend 2 hours with your body doing the work to learn the warm-ups and learn how to do these things really well. You can't just go pin it to the wall in phase 1. You can't, like, it's delayed gratification. It's more of like a homework. Like I need to do these things properly because I'm investing in myself for these next phases. And then once you get integrated, and you, like, the warm-ups at first, they look like, wow, this is so much, but you go through piece by piece, and then the next time, oh, it's easier. And the next time you don't even need the videos. And the next time you're good. And then you get a new phase, and you get to learn little progressions, and it's fun because you're like, wow, like I learned a leg lower and it improved. And now I get a progression of the leg lower, and I can do it because I did that. And then you start building confidence. And then you need support. So you go, you post, or you go to the Instagram and see everybody who posts Insta stories, or you post on Slack, or you message Z. So I think everyone is in good hands with us, from beginner level all the way to Bo Kittredge, because Bo was doing a lot of the same stuff. He hurt himself, so he was doing a lot of the same stuff that is essentially, strength and power zero. Like a classic exercise that like almost everyone needs to do is just taking a kettlebell and getting your knee up and holding this and driving this leg into the ground and getting glute, quad, adductor to activate. And like, I'll never forget Bo doing that exercise, and he's just like shaking and like crushed because he needed to start from scratch. So he's doing the same thing that a beginner level athlete would do. And that's okay, because when you get injured, or if you get injured, you're going to have to start from the beginning again anyway. But if you understand these things, you're going to get yourself back quicker.
So along the theme of injuries, if someone has like a current injury and needs to incorporate PT into their routines, like is your program adjustable to like different injuries? Say if someone has a torn labrum and they can't do like pull-ups or certain types of motion.
Yeah, well, with the distance coaching, we can make really super customizable programs like that. With the Peak Plus, we want you to understand these concepts well enough that you can do what's called a lateralization yourself. So it might say chin up, but for people that can't do chin ups or assisted chin ups, then you have a lateralization of a dumbbell row. But like really specific injuries, we would need to do either the distance coaching, so you get calls with me or one of my coaches, and we can make that customized program, which is more work, so there's a higher fee. We also have a physical therapist that we're going to bring on for just what you're talking about. And then there's like actually going to PT versus just doing a functional program, and which is better. And that's hard to know. But yeah, in general, we can accommodate that. It really depends on the severity of the injury, and you'd have to send a lot of videos and stuff so that we could see your movement. And then, when I'm in Boston or in the US, I coordinate with a lot of physical therapists, because a lot of physical therapy is, unfortunately, it's billable. So a lot of times they want to drag it out to multiple sessions when they could expedite you faster just so they continue to get the insurance money. And that's, not the nicest thing to say, but I've had a lot of issues with physical therapists just not doing the right thing for the athlete because they're taking too long. So, going just through a lot of this stuff just fixes a lot of innate problems. But again, if it's really something serious, then you would want to do the distance coaching, or at least like a consult call. Like I have people that hire me just for an hour mentorship call, just to get a strategy together to look at movement, and then to look at, hey, I can't afford distance coaching, but what can I do within this program? Because I'm a Peak Plus subscriber, but I can't do chin-ups. What can I do instead of chin-ups? Because that might be like the only thing that, within the program you can't do, and you don't want to miss out on it when the simple fix is just let's do a dumbbell row instead of a chin-up,
I've asked a couple of peaking questions. Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little muffled, but I got you.
Oh, all right. Different mic here. I'm also involved in wrestling, so I know a little bit about what they think about peaking. It's obviously a little different here. One thing, obviously you peak for the postseason, but I was wondering, would you recommend, especially at the club level, people, especially the newer ones, peaking for the tryouts? I noticed you didn't really put it that way. In wrestling, they'll peak for the postseason, and then they'll usually pick an important tournament and or maybe a dual meet somewhere. I don't know if that would necessarily apply there, but the younger kids, they've got to make the team.
Right. Yeah. No, two examples this year. It's an interesting question. If we look at the club series, then generally we have the tryouts in May, which is at the end of our preseason phase, which is like a sub peak. So you're going to be like, a lot of people feel ready to go at the end of off season phase 4. But then if you can get 3 phases in March, April, May, you're going to have a peak at tryouts. So that we've almost all of our club players do that. And then that is a good timeline also for college players. But we had some debacles last year because, you know, we had a lot of national team tryout athletes that applied to get the tryout, but they didn't know if they were going to get the tryout. So we're sitting there waiting, like, are we training off season or do we need to peak in February for this East Coast tryout? And then like 2 months out, they would get the email and it's like, okay, we need to adjust your program so that just to do the best that we can do for you to peak in February and do a sub peak. And having like all this stuff built out, it's a lot easier because we can just take, okay, let's do 1 phase of Swole Strong phase 2 off season, and then let's go right into the preseason and let's cut this phase from 3 weeks or from 4 weeks to 2 weeks and do this. And, you know, that's why a lot of athletes really benefit from the distance coaching or the kind of customized stuff. But then we had the pro leagues, like a lot of the 2 years before, Brute Squad, for example, you know, they just were training all off season and and there was no pro league. And then, you know, the Portland Rising starts and all these women's pro leagues. And so they're all saying like, hey, we need to be ready to play by February. And that it's hard on a performance coach because it's like, gosh, like that doesn't give us a lot of time to develop these, you know, things, but it's just the reality of the sport. There's so many players and so many people that have multiple peaks over the course of the calendar year. So there's ideal, and then there's like the reality. And the reality is we can make those changes and just do the best that we can to have multiple peaks.
Right, then at the other end of at the competition end of the season, I mean the you know, nationals end or whatever. In wrestling, it's generally 3 straight weekends. Usually have districts, regions, states, and in college, it's the qualifier, a week off, and then the nationals. And I suppose if you're pretty good, you might train through the first weekend somewhat, but you know, most are going to start tapering before that. But that's only 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks maybe.
Right.
Ultimate is a tournament, 2 weeks, a tournament, and then maybe 3 weeks before nationals.
Yeah.
And that seems like a long time to hold the peak.
Yeah. I mean, you can't hold the peak. It's like a matter of getting yourself into the best shape that you can be, and then just kind of it's almost like maintaining a peak. So like generally after a tournament, we want athletes to get in the gym on the Monday or Tuesday afterwards and just like 30 minutes of just hit 2 sets of these exercises. You're already strong, so it's somewhat heavy, 80-90%, just nice and easy. Just don't let your body lose those strength and power adaptations. And that's one of the most important things with like peaking. And then it's like, if you have a tournament, if you have regionals on Saturday, you might only lift on Tuesday, because if you lift on Wednesday or Thursday, you might risk being, you know, not being as explosive as you can be. So it becomes really tricky with the lifting, but the movement quality, just staying in a good position, getting tuned up, doing the warm-ups, doing the breathing work, the rolling, the stretching, that becomes really high priority. And then the conditioning is something that you get a ton of conditioning at practice in these tournaments. So the conditioning gets really tricky. Like, do we add extra conditioning on top of, you know, having a really intense practice with all these universe points and games to 3 or whatever it is? So that's where my job, that's where like the team captain and the athlete are going to have to make so many decisions that unless they were like with a coach all the time to help guide them, the athletes that can understand these things and understand, hey, my body performs better when I lift on Tuesday so that I can have a good sectionals on Saturday. Those are the athletes that tend to do better, because you're going to have to make a lot of judgment calls yourself. You know, you might tweak something at a tournament, and, you know, different things. And you're going to have a strategy and a toolbox to make sure you can get yourself ready for the next event.
Thanks. You played didn't you play indoor with us a few years back?
Yeah, I played Hatch with Foley, and then I came and hung out with y'all. You sound familiar. I'm having these flashbacks of. I don't think I played. What did I play, Foley? I played like the outdoor 7-on-7 grass game.
Was it at Fish? Is that I remember you and the nutritionist. I apologize, I don't remember the name, but you were up there because I remember about Beach Ultimate and stuff. I mean, it was a few years back. I was and still am actually the real old guy that was there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, then I remember you. I remember because we had a conversation. You were telling me how deep the roots are with some of what's going on there. Have you ever made it down to Ocean City Beach Classic? That's another fun tournament close to y'all.
Oh.
Well, I could go all day with questions. So y'all just let me know. I don't really have anything for another 20 minutes or so. Oh man, I used to play. What was that guy, kid? Josh Knightsey. There's this Messiah kid that was so nasty. We used to play them a lot in college.
Chris Knightsey, and then there's Boltsy.
Yeah. That dude was so sick, man. Does he still play?
Yeah, Masters. Oh yeah, Rat Pack too.
Nice.
He played with me, the skills thing.
How come I
Nice.
can't remember you, Zach?
Someone's going to be doing your program. Do they pretty much need to be? They need to have a gym, like a pretty decent gym to go to, right?
Well, I mean, with COVID, we've had to take our program and have gym option and no gym option. And a lot of people during this time have started making home gyms, and then a lot of gyms are reopening. We hope a lot of them will be open by October, but to get the most out of it, yes, you gotta lift. I mean, you can do a lot with just the kettlebell and stuff, but in general, you're going to want to lift. But I mean, even if you just wanted to develop, if you did the base level training for ultimate.com, you can go in and get conditioning and speed and agility and movement quality programs that you don't need a gym. But all that is going to be better if you do the strength and power development. It's just the reality. Your body will be more efficient. You put more force in the ground. Everything improves when you lift. So ideally, to really follow the program, you should either have home gym or or go to the gym. But I've taken some distance coaching clients, and a lot of them don't really realize why they need certain pieces of home gym equipment until a couple weeks in the program. They're like, crap, I need this, and then they buy it or they don't. But I'm doing a lot of like custom programs for people that only have access to certain things. But the custom, again, is like, we have to charge more for that. And that's like, you get calls with me and the immediate feedback and a custom program. But then the Peak Plus, we have to generalize it so a whole team can do it, or individuals. If you've taken the time to have kind of at least the onboarding experience, and you understand all the nuts and bolts of the program, so that you can understand your body well enough to know, like, I can get by with just this. Like, I don't need to do these 30-minute warm-ups, but I do know that my body responds really well to trap bar deadlift, split squat, and SLDL, and push-ups and chin-ups. And I only have 30 minutes. And I'm just going to do whatever makes my body feel good with warm-ups, even though there's this long warm-up. I don't have time for that. And I'm just going to do 2 sets of all these exercises that I know my body really benefits from. Because there's also mental health and sanity, and like there's sometimes I don't want to do sometimes I don't want to do the aerobic plyometrics or the explosive repeats. I just need a long run, and it's like that kind of stuff is real, especially a sport like ultimate, especially a time like now. So I think there's a lot of athletes in your position, and that's for a long term, like the athletes who do the best, and Foley, we could talk about this when I get back to the States, but when I come out and do a 6-hour workshop where we do 3 hours gym, 3 hours field, like everybody leaves so empowered because they understand it. Like they've taken the time and it's all there. It's harder to do online. But it'd be cool to do one of those one day. But I think, if you could get some time to like actually really learn the nuts and bolts, then you can more easily make those decisions. And you might already be there if you've been playing for a while, and then you just pick up little pieces that make sense to you, and just kind of leave the rest and make your own program. And that's one reason I always try to teach the principles, because a lot of people are in that same boat. And if you just understand these principles, you can make the judgment calls yourself and make a program, that you that kind of fits you. But yeah, I mean, I really appreciate this, Foley and Zach and all of y'all. So thanks so much for including me. I haven't done a lecture in a while. I've been kind of laying low. So it was really fun putting this together, especially for friends that I've played with before. And, I'd love to keep building. So just, reach out to me anytime you need anything. I'm very open to helping everyone I can. So just keep me posted, and we'll go over that and get this presentation out. Yeah, I mean, definitely like look at the pieces that I went over, and then like maybe send a poll or something and say like, hey, if we brought Tim back on, what would you want him to focus on? And then I could put together a full presentation. And hopefully, like if we just did like speed and agility, for example, or strength and power, it's fun to share the videos and the movement, because these are like, I'd be thrilled to do that. So that's a great idea. Cool. All right, y'all, make a great day.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy the sunshine out there.
You're going to be out here soon. You got to come play the Bronco Open next year.
I know. I always wanted to.
Do it. You got a place to stay. Might have to cuddle with my cat, though.
That sounds great.
All right. Love you guys. Bye.